Maduro did not dare to leave and go to Beijing.
That's a message too. Not moving is a message, of course.
Because he should have been there, right?
Clear. And don't send Jorge Rodriguez. He must have gone.
He sent Jorge Rodriguez. Look there, it's important to note that ESED was not prominently featured on the very front page of the publication, which is quite significant.
Photo. In fact, at some point there was even doubt that maybe they themselves had staged something or done some kind of trick to make it look like he went to China. But no. Well, I did see images showing that Jorge Rodriguez was there during the celebration, but not in the front row.
No.
He didn't get lost in the vastness of the
row of the bad guys.
Among the thousands of people who were present at that grand celebration, not at all. No one was there.
All right, if you've just tuned into our broadcast, we had initially started with the very important topic of what precisely happened in Nepal. We will certainly expand on that particular subject a bit later in the program, but before that I had previously mentioned this significant interview that Correa conducted with Maduro, which is also quite noteworthy. First of all, it's a truly desperate move because Rafael Correa, the former president and would-be dictator in Ecuador, is now playing at being a journalist who frequently gives strong opinions and whose very foundation is a profound betrayal of the country. Anyone who openly calls for an invasion is undeniably a traitor to the country and should certainly suffer the harshest possible punishment, you see?
Unfortunately, there are sellouts
in Venezuela,
in America.
In Venezuela, by law, by the Constitution, calling for an invasion, supporting an invasion, promoting bombings, promoting the violation of national sovereignty is a crime against the nation.
Former President Lasso, President of the Republic of Ecuador, just said in an interview on CNN with Fernando del Rincon that he would support a U.S. bombing on Ecuadorian soil to fight drugs. Since when is drug trafficking fought with bombings? But allowing the bombing of your own country is apparently no big deal?
Because
he should be answering to justice and he's a sellout.
Of course, because there is simply a right-wing political movement that emerged as a direct reaction to the progressive spring that occurred from approximately 2003 to 2014 or even 2015. The right wing that emerged is a bucolic, extremist, sellout right, the worst kind of right wing we've seen in the continent in the last 150 years. Because there have always been right and left, center-right and center-left, but from sensible constitutional political positions, often nationalists as well. Not today. Today, these individuals are simply direct agents of foreign imperialist interests and not genuine political leaders, but rather puppets of external forces.
I have heard right-wing leaders opposed to your government, President, but who are patriotic and nationalists say, I may be totally opposed to Chavismo, to President Nicolas Maduro's government, but at the first shot fired against a Venezuelan soldier, we all have one government and one homeland. The Venezuelan people will unite.
That's right.
It will be, unfortunately.
Well, that last part is something that, the indifference, that idea that Latin America will come to Venezuela's defense only exists in their little heads. There is no sign of it except for Petro.
And even he seems to be backtracking a bit. I do not know if you had the distinct chance to see a particular tweet that he personally wrote early this very morning. I truly think he had a significant moment of truth there. Something profound and impactful happened to him while being in that specific situation.
La Guajira.
Yes, because he mentioned the issue of political prisoners since there are Colombians detained in Venezuela. He specifically referred to the case of Enrique Marquez, who was a former director of the National Electoral Council and has, I think, already been detained for 8 months, hasn't received any visits, and is in the same situation as most political prisoners in Venezuela. So he said something along the lines of, more or less, that if injustice comes from those in power, then it would be very difficult to defend that power. Something like that. And me, what happened to him? I was really surprised by what Gustavo Petro said.
It's quite curious that both of them are talking about bombings and...
No one has actually mentioned bombings.
But I don't really know. They are talking about potential bombings, I think, happening today. I think it's an option,
Well, you said it at the beginning.
I think it's an option when you analyze the facts. And I repeat, I'm not encouraging anything. First of all, because Trump isn't listening to me or anything like that.
Besides, whatever they already have planned, that's already set, whatever they're going to do.
Yes, because look, now Jose Antonio Iborra has just reminded me of something quite significant, a very important meeting I had with Fidel Castro that many Cubans know quite well about in Panama. He was complaining that there was a group of Cuban exiles who had supposedly come in to try to assassinate him. And I slipped into the press conference and asked him a basic question. Well, what are you complaining about if you've closed off all the peaceful ways to remove you from power? I mean, these people shut down all peaceful avenues for a change of power and then complain that people want to remove them by force when they themselves are in power by force, when they impose themselves by force. In other words, if there's one thing that's been proven with these regimes, it's that they don't understand civilized reasoning. So I don't see any other way. It's really funny that they talk about a progressive spring in 2015. I didn't know that existed. Had you heard that term? It wasn't the Arab Spring, there were other springs. And let me make a note about grammar because it caught my attention that he says it's a bucolic opposition. And so I say bucolic. No, bucolic comes from the countryside, even in the bucolic poetic movement. And I looked it up in the dictionary just in case. It means to evoke in an idealized way the countryside, life in the countryside, said of a genre of poetry, of a poetic composition, usually in dialogue, that deals with the idealized way of pastoral life of shepherds, pertaining or related to. I don't know, maybe he
meant to say peasant opposition. Maybe he meant he doesn't even know
what he's talking about. It was when he said,
besides, what he's saying is a lie. That's not opposition, not what he's referring to. It's not real opposition in Venezuela.
Refi, I
get lost. What Rafael Correa is referring to when he says they don't go is what is called, or what was at some point called, the Alacrans movement, which in that 2015 assembly in Venezuela, the last legitimate assembly elected in Venezuela, a very high level of corruption was uncovered with the clap food bags. These are the food bags that they distribute, where he is involved. That's where the name comes from. Yes, that's where the name Alex Saab comes up. And it was a huge
business deal.
Of course. Well, and there was a group of parliamentarians, of deputies who called themselves the opposition, and it turns out they were receiving money from Nicolas Maduro's regime so that the obstacles in the National Assembly's Oversight Committee would be bypassed. They were paying to avoid, actually, for example, listing the nutritional value of the foods in the clap bags at that time. They would copy the nutritional values from Empresas Polar's food products. Empresas Polar in Venezuela, which has been in Venezuela for many years, one of the main food companies in Venezuela. And they would copy those nutritional values and, of course, paid everyone off so that it would pass through that filter. They even traveled at one crucial point in time when the controversial figure Alex Saab's name first prominently came up. Those very same dedicated deputies actually undertook a significant journey to definitively clear Alex Saab's name. And well, in the inevitable end, they ultimately had absolutely no other viable choice but to finally and completely drop the entire act. It's that opposition that Nicolas Maduro's regime has been shaping to fit its own needs. That opposition, those leaders he has used to steal, for example, the party cards that truly belong to the democratic forces, where he stole the cards of Primero Justicia, Voluntad Popular, and, well, Vente Venezuela. They never even allowed Vente, which is Maria Corina's party, to register with the National Electoral Council, so it could never actually be established as a real political force in the country. In other words, what he's referring to is a lie. To sum it up for you in one sentence.
Very well then, let us now listen to a more extensive portion of this intriguing dialogue between the notorious scoundrels Rafael Correa and Nicolas Maduro.
That's what they're trying to do with this Hollywood-style story, trying to tarnish the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, its leadership, its president, and by smearing us, attempt an operation to attack us. Well, we have 8 warships, destroyers, right in front of us in the Caribbean, something that's never been seen before. The only other time something like this is remembered is during the October crisis of '62, when they blockaded Cuba. Well, now they have 8 ships, 1 down, 200 missiles aimed at our heads. They have a nuclear submarine, and now they're saying they have Puerto Rico because the head of the Pentagon arrived in Puerto Rico. And the governor of Puerto Rico said that Puerto Rico was the base for a military operation against Venezuela. She said it.
Let's see. We have the governor of Puerto Rico here because it seems someone asks her if she's afraid that Maduro might attack her, and she gives a response. Let's watch it right away. We have her now. Why is she here? Because her response is quite interesting.
This significant action is going to put a definitive stop to the pervasive drug trafficking within this entire area. So finally, what do you have to say to the citizens who have expressed fear, believing that they are at risk of an attack? And I bring this up also because you say this could position the island as a hub and a center of operations. So what do you have to say to the residents, to the citizens?
Who's going to attack us? Maduro's little boats? I think this will...
Of course, we're not going to be attacked by Maduro's little boats. There's something ridiculous about the forces Maduro shows off, like the nuclear submarine. First of all, it's a nuclear submarine because it uses nuclear energy to move. That doesn't mean it has atomic weapons. About the October crisis, 2 details. First, calling it the October crisis, which is the official term used by the Castro regime, refers to the missile crisis. The naval blockade of Cuba at that time paid off. The Russians, the Soviets, had to remove the nuclear weapons from Cuba. That was the positive part for the world. The negative part is that, in exchange, President Kennedy made a deal with Khrushchev. And I used to think that was just a legend, but it's there, isn't it? Attempting a regime change in Cuba, which is something Venezuela has been playing at. Venezuela has been trying to insert itself into the China-Russia dispute to, at some point, bet on something like, okay, I'll let Ukraine go, you leave Venezuela alone, you leave Cuba alone. Dividing up the world in the style of, let's say, the colonial era, the late 19th century, early 20th century. I think we're living in different times now. For example, there's no doubt that if the United States intervenes in Venezuela, it's not to stay. It's not to stay and govern Venezuela. It's not to steal the oil or anything like that, because a country's wealth no longer lies in that. It lies elsewhere. The United States
Stayed in Panama.
No, come on, please. Not even in 2000 did they fully hand over the canal to Panama. I was there that day with Simon Ferro, who often comes here. He was the United States ambassador to Panama. He's one of our panelists. We were there at that moment. We filmed it. I don't know if I've told you that I lived in Panama. I saw that whole process.
Didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't? I lived through the whole Noriega process. And this situation, even though the experts themselves say it's not precisely the same, it actually is quite similar. I could genuinely tell you tons of compelling things. Oh no, that Venezuela is not at all the same as Panama.
And exactly how long did it actually take them to go in and then get him out at that particular time?
Well, what happened, and this is a difference, is that the Americans were already there, because the Southern Command was based in Panama, and there were 3 U.S. military bases in Panama. How did it all start? I still don't know how. The main television stations in Panama were RPC, Channel 4, where I worked, and Telemetro, Channel 13, which I collaborated with and knew well, and those were the 2 big public channels. They went off the air, and a U.S. soldier of Puerto Rican origin appeared, speaking in somewhat confusing but understandable Spanish, explaining to everyone at home that this operation had begun.
The information.
It lasted for hours.
Exactly.
Hours.
And the information that...
Then the legend that they had killed 3,000 Panamanians, I don't know how many, all of that is exaggerated legend. And today there is democracy in Panama thanks to that, because otherwise the military would still be there. Please, it was a terrible thing. And every day it becomes harder for Americans to intervene. But every day it also becomes harder for anti-Americans to discredit an intervention or to sustain it over time. Before Panama, there was also the small island nation of Grenada, and I truly don't know if that particular event was a classic intervention. It certainly wouldn't make much sense given the complex and evolving geopolitical landscape of the world today. I repeat, the news from Qatar tells you specifically, Israel went over all considerations. Those people were in another country. They violated Qatar's sovereignty. The Arab world is shouting something is going to happen. Tell me, do you think something is going to happen? What is DDAT saying about this? Is something going to happen? You don't even know what you're saying.
For me, it's already happening. It's not that it's going to happen. It's happening right now. But what you were saying, of course, was different because there were American bases in the case of Panama. But who's to say there aren't already forces inside Venezuela? Come on. Exactly. That's why, and for a while now, otherwise, how do they get so much information too? I must go back to the crucial topic of the unfortunate sinking of the boat. They were actively listening to their private conversations. They absolutely knew it was inevitably coming. There was a distinct voice from Miraflores that explicitly told them to persistently keep going. They are fully aware of everything they are doing, absolutely everything without exception. So I don't think that, as people are saying, there's going to be an invasion, like people are imagining there will be a landing and a bunch of soldiers will come in and civilians will be caught in the crossfire. I don't think that's Donald Trump's plan at all.
Let me take a moment to put this into a much broader and more comprehensive context, allowing us to fully wrap up our discussion for today. Following this, I would like to extend a warm invitation for you to return and join us again in the near future for further engaging conversations. No, let's go. Even though I went out on the street the other day and asked around, and nobody believes it's going to happen, what are they going to do? Nothing. Every day I believe less that they're going to do it. They're already doing that, I have no doubt. Now I'm going to put you in the international context, which is easier. Didier, please have another conversation over there. Keep going. Deror, I don't like it. Well, no, but it's a distraction. Sorry, no, which is truly easier. Overthrowing the current regime of Maduro, effectively solving the ongoing war in Ukraine, definitively resolving the complex conflict in Israel and the broader Middle East region, or finally settling the persistent dispute with China. Of all those international equations, which one is the easiest for the United States?
Maduro, obviously.
Please. It's abundantly clear, or if they genuinely need a significant victory to secure their position. Let's put it at the level of cynicism.
And with that, they then hit the other individuals.
Exactly.
With that, they strike at the others.
With Venezuela, you effectively stop the influence of China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba first and foremost, which is a crucial strategic move. Drug trafficking, illegal immigration, and other serious criminal activities.
The oil, some...
Not just the oil that they simply give away.
I know we're not the enemies of the United States. I know we're not, because we also have to be clear, and there's a lot in geopolitics. Of course, and Venezuela is not the center of the world. But you just described it perfectly. It hits Maduro. At the very least, you hit them, and you hit them hard.
Of course, it's not about being ethnocentric. As Correa once told me when I asked him a question he didn't like. Look, and you've hit the nail on the head with this conflict, and it's that, well, first, something significant is happening, and quite unlike what tragically happened today in Nepal, there is indeed an alternative government. There is a legitimate people's government, a government that truly has everyone's full legitimacy and would inherently know precisely what to do.
And that's what we want. They're not going to create
a power vacuum.
That could have happened at other times. Maybe that's why it didn't happen.
What happened in Cuba? We were talking about that the other day in 1958. On December 17, 1958, the Americans told Fulgencio Batista that he had to leave. They could have waited until February 24th for the person they had chosen in fraudulent elections to take over. But by rushing that departure, they created a power vacuum. In politics, there is no vacuum. If you create a vacuum, someone will fill it.
Absolutely.
And we are still paying for that mistake today. In Venezuela, that's not going to happen. So what more do you want?
The table?
The set? Please, not seeing it as being blind. Now, could things go wrong too? Everything could go wrong.
Well, everything? Anything is possible. But we're here. No.
They're not helpless. They're doing these calculations and must be getting ready. But still, put yourself in their shoes. They don't have many options. All the mechanisms they're using no longer work. The UN mechanism doesn't work. The Latin American patrioturismo doesn't work. I think that the United
States is trying to avoid getting into a controversy over that. For example, completely wiping them out, or perhaps launching a missile, which, as you have previously stated, we are certainly not calling for that. I think that in this particular situation...
Unfortunately, that's the simplest option.
But I think they're trying to avoid reaching that point. That's why what they're trying to do is to surround. To surround. And for him to say, look, between invading...
and eliminating, between, what do they call it? Extraction. Extraction operation. An extraction operation is quite something. It's a bit complicated. You have to go in, get inside, extract the guy, and take him with you. It's like something out of a movie. Hollywood. Let's
look at the exit of the 5 from the Argentine embassy in Caracas, which they call Operation Guacamaya. I know it's not the same. It's not the same.
Yes, but I suspect we still don't know what happened.
No, nobody does.
They suspect that they bribed those who were supposed to guard them. No.
And a substantial $50 million in funding.
I really don't know, Sior.
They bribe a few people.
Let's see. But if it doesn't work, there has to be a time limit.
I imagine they must also be managing that. Well, I hope so. Not militarily either.
I repeat, we're not here. Don't go saying later. No.
No, not at all. The least we are. What I want is for him to face justice for real.
Yeah, that we are. Jessica and Sao Estaban say, no, because like you, they catch you there in the little press all the time. Says Jessica K. They were absolutely calling for the assassination. Do not deliver. I would like that.
They face justice. Let the
Self-criticism be done.
What I want is for them to turn themselves into justice, not for them to be eliminated.
Have you noticed that these communists never do self-criticism? They demand that others do it, but they are never guilty of anything.
They
are very shameless. Thank you very much
really
for being here with us today. When we come back, please allow me to enthusiastically promote Dariel Fernandez, who is not only the dedicated and highly efficient tax collector for our community, but also the very important individual who oversees and manages all of the essential driver's license offices throughout the entire region. There's good news for a large part of Venezuelans about the driver's license that he's coming to share with us. And also this fight against people who are shamelessly doing business with the Castro dictatorship. From here, from Miami, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much for in the next
episode. Pleasure. Next episode.
Let's hope it's to celebrate for a good reason.
How things are. You all did a version of El Derecho de Nature on Venezuelan television, which is a Cuban telenovela that was really good. Well, this is like that. There's a part, I don't know if you know that story, just to wrap up. El Derecho de Nacer was a radio drama that later became I don't know what. It was a
soap opera, but I didn't see it.
And in Venezuela, they made a very interesting version where one of the main characters asked for a raise. They don't give it to him. And since it was radio, he says, oh, well, I'm not coming to the next episode. They did it live. Imagine what a problem that is. And so I think it was Felix B. Kanye, the writer, how did he solve the problem? Well, the character had a stroke and was left mute. So he could only communicate with gestures. He spoke there was a soap opera going on the radio and another one in the newspapers about how the labor conflict was being resolved until finally the character spoke again. This particular soap opera is currently in that very dramatic episode of profound silence where we truly don't know what exactly is going to happen next.